Next thing on the agenda, we did have, and that was for the minutes of May 20th. Also have the executive session that needs to be approved. This was of June 12th. And Friday, June 12th at 8 o'clock in the morning, governing body conducted an executive session pursuant to Indiana's open meetings law, IC 5-14-1, 5-6.1, for the following reasons. For the discussion of strategy with respect to any of the following: a real property transaction, including a purchase by the governing body up to the time a contract or option is executed by the parties. And that's by the Jasper City Council, and the meeting was held in the Jasper City Hall, Pfaffenweiler Room. Members of the governing body present were John Schrader, Dave Hurst, Paul Lori, Kevin Manley, Nancy Eckerly, and Phil Mundy. Members of the governing body absent, Chad Leakin. Others present were Renee Kabrick, Alan Seifert, and Mayor Vonderheide. There was no subject matter discussed in the executive session other than the subject matter specified in the public notice. This meeting was adjourned at 9 o'clock a.m. May I have a motion to approve this memorandum of the executive session?
So moved.
Motion from John.
I'll second.
Second from Phil. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Chad abstained. I wasn't there.
Thank you, Chad, for. And then next thing on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-6. It's an ordinance regulating animals in the city of Jasper, providing penalties for violations of such regulations. It's available for one reading only procedure. So could I ask for a motion to consider the ordinance 2020-6 for one reading only?
I would go ahead and make the motion to be read for one reading only, please.
I have a motion from Paul for one reading only.
I'll second that motion.
A second from Nancy. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Could I have a motion to have the ordinance read in full or by title only?
We'll go ahead and make the motion to have it read by title only also, please.
All for title only.
I'll second it.
I have a second from Dave. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Would the city attorney please read ordinance number 2020-6 by title only?
Number 2020-6, an ordinance regulating animals in the city of Jasper and providing penalties for violation of such regulations, amending ordinance number 2018-4.
Could I ask for a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2020-6?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Dave. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from John. At this time, I'd like to open it up for discussion.
I guess I'll start. I did have some issues with it, I guess, after reading several of the letters that had come in. And also, I guess I maybe talking to different folks, maybe a compromise that I thought I'd like to just throw out. But before I do that, Renee, can you give us a real short rundown of what this actually does as far as changes to the existing ordinance? Is that possible?
Is do you want everything or just
I guess the highlight of the changes. I'm sorry.
I said, do you want me to speak to everything or just with respect to the noise? Because that's really what's been,
That would be the good start.
all right. So,
Kevin,
previously, we had language that said that it was unlawful for a person to, I wish I don't have the, I hate to just paraphrase, but if you had an animal on your property and it was creating noise that was bothersome to a neighbor, then that's a violation. And that applied throughout the city to all properties. This language would take the language that that we agreed to for noise and would not have it apply to commercial. It says commercial animal facilities, including but not limited to commercial pet facilities, animal welfare facilities, veterinary hospitals, or grooming parlors that are located in B1, B3, I1, I2, or that where there's a special circumstance such as an injury or illness.
Yeah. I think that probably hits the more sore subject out of all of them there. But I guess to throw out an example that I looked at, and if I could use the example, would be where Bucket Mariner's building is now. And the uniqueness of that is that if somebody wanted to move in a animal boarding or animal sheltering facility in that place and then basically fence in the backyard for those animals, they could do so, and the dogs could literally bark all night long, and it would not be in any a violation of that ordinance. That would be correct.
That would not be correct. So we still do have, and actually we're getting ready to rewrite our.
would you speak into the mic?
Our
please?
public nuisance ordinance.
Okay.
So in our public nuisance ordinance, we actually have language that says, well, as I said, we're rewriting, but there would still be an issue with respect to something that is, I'll call it unreasonable. So if you have, even if you're in a commercial facility or a commercial area, one of these zones that are identified, if you are creating a circumstance or situation that is unreasonable for that area, then there still exists a public nuisance.
How in that nuisance policy is it going to address animals then too? Will it specifically address that?
Anything.
Okay.
I can't, I mean, again, we're in the process of working on rewriting that. So if that needs to have specific language about animals or motors, or, I mean, there's no way that we can include an entire listing of anything or everything that causes noise.
I think the reason why I threw out Mariner Plumbing and Heating's location there on, was it 4th Street was that literally borders on residential. So in other words, obviously there's got to be an end of one zoning and a start of another. And if that would be the case, I just feel Jasper's too small. You don't have these giant acres and acres of zoning commercial areas that I think that literally every dog facility like that, as opposed to giving them just a carte blanche to basically allow them to do that, one of the things I had thought about it was that maybe, and this, bear with me here for a second, would be to have it written in that you cannot have any type of animal boarding. And if you want to have one, you have to go and get a variance to do that. And the only reason why I'm doing that is the variance would then require them to come and present it to a board that would literally go out and look at it. And it's not like we're going to have 25, 30 animal boarding places. This may only happen once or twice more. My only concern about what we have now is with the new ordinance is that I just feel we're kicking the can down the road, that it's going to come back and bite us again. And I think that if we said, no, you cannot have them, but you have to go in and get a variance to do that, a governing body would have to go out and look at it and say, okay, they're right in the middle of a commercial area and they're a mile and a half from any house. I would have no problem with that. But if they are in a situation like they wanted to take over, like where Bucket Mariners building is, right across the street is 9 houses. And if I owned one of those houses and lived there, honestly, I'd be pretty upset. And I just feel that this would allow them to look at and say, well, even though it's in a commercial area, it's probably not the best suited spot for it. And that way we wouldn't have that issue coming back again. It just gives us a second layer, so to speak, that somebody actually had to physically drive out there and look at the location and say, okay, we're 250 yards or 300 yards or a quarter mile from another house. That's really my only concern on there. But if you handled, the second part of that was the barking, and I just didn't feel comfortable given any facility like that, free reign to bark all night. And I think that would be an issue on there. But if that is going to be addressed in the nuisance ordinance, I'm okay with that. But I mean, does anybody?
It's currently addressed, is it not?
Well, we currently have a public nuisance ordinance that addresses
Noise.
public nuisances in general. I will not say that our existing language is adequate, because it's not. And that's why we are getting ready we're in the process of addressing it. But you will get the opportunity to ensure.
But until that's addressed, and if we would pass this as it is, this is the way it would be, because that's not been passed yet. Is that correct? It's not even really been written yet. Is that correct, Renee?
But we do currently have a public nuisance ordinance that, again, it prohibits, again, I don't have the language in front of me, but we have applied it with a reasonableness standard. So the best example that I can give you is several years ago, there was a complaint about a four-wheeler in the city limits at nighttime after dark, 10 o'clock, driving on a pretty large piece of property regularly. That's not prohibited, but we found that 10 o'clock was unreasonable. There's nothing that says you can't operate a vehicle like that at 10 o'clock, but the public nuisance ordinance, we use and interpret that to be unreasonable according to that ordinance. And that's how we enforced it.
Renee, who is the final authority on the standard of reasonableness?
Well, so that could go to court. I mean, if we fined someone for or didn't, then and they disagreed, then that could be taken to county court.
It's a matter of interpretation, is kind of what you're saying, Chad.
Yes.
You just couldn't make it a policy that cover everything.
I really would like to refer to Allison's letter, and she's in the audience there, and I thank you for writing this letter.
Would you like to read it, Allison, or? Well, we do. Everyone's gotten a copy of it, if you'd like to. If you'd come up front and identify yourself and read your letter. The mic, yes. Make sure the mic is turned on, please.
Yeah, it's on. Can I be heard? Name is Allison Engel, and I am owner and operator of Pedigree Professional Pet Services here in Jasper, and I've been operating for 10 years. And I wrote this letter in regards to rewriting the current and rephrasing or exclusion of my industry and other industries to the animal noise ordinance specifically. I have 20 plus years in animal service industry, ranging from training to my current services that I provide to residents here in Jasper and Du Bois County. My letter reads, Dear elected officials, recently I was made aware of the animal noise ordinance was being reviewed and potentially revised, which may or may not affect my business. I write to you at the request of a council member and private citizens to provide my position regarding the animal ordinance review for change. The recent review of the animal noise ordinance and its application or exclusion to pet service providers is prudent and care needs to be taken for everyone. I feel it is not necessary to exclude any pet service provider because as an educated, experienced, and trained provider, the health and wellness of pets in my business care and the care of those professionals, which I just added, which isn't in here, is held to a higher standard. If pets are barking excessively, it is usually because they are alerting to something either needed or wanted. If left unaddressed, barking can agitate others in the facility and a pack frenzy can result. This poses a risk of injury to persons or other persons in the facility. The recent community complaints of excessive noise of a pet daycare boarding business has brought the need to pursue better standards or guidelines for pets' health and wellness. Though it is at the heart of any person entering into the business of pet care, there is need to have proper knowledge and care of the services provided. The positions vary on the personal accountability of this care due to the fact there is no regulatory agency to govern the business. The field of service providing animal care is considered self-governing, which with this, along in the recent worldwide situation, puts a spotlight on things like this. This burden has now fallen on you to address the concerns of the community, residents, and fairness to the pet service industry in our community. I am not opposed to any regulation, and I know it is needed and has been present for some time. There are currently 2 pet daycares providing business in the county that are brick and mortar, and a few home-based boarding care businesses provided by private citizens at their homes that have either received special zoning exemptions or permissions to operate, which are adding to the concerns to noise levels. Residents seek to use these businesses to aid in care of their personal pets, trusting these businesses know how to deal with their pets and are trained to have the necessary precautions on site in place to safeguard their beloved pets. Signing off on liability waiver is not enough considering patron pets' parents are already under the assumption the business is trained to deal with the pets in their care. The dog fights and deaths that have occurred are proof that something is not present that should be. A daycare environment is to be fun and encouraging. This can be accomplished without excessive barking, and in any training and experience I have, it has been highly discouraged. This no barking environment is for the health and safety of the pets in the care of the facility and is also to lower the threshold of chance of injury to humans as well. Again, I do not consider that pet care industry should be excluded from the noise ordinance, animal noise ordinance, due to the fact that pet health and wellness is held to a much higher standard. The current animal noise ordinance is effective in its current written form. I have an open door policy to invite anyone to visit my facility, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
I did have a question for you.
Sure.
My scenario a little bit ago for that operation would border right up to residential areas. If it is run correctly and it is following the guidelines and the city has no complaints against it, are you comfortable? Would you be comfortable running a facility next to a residential area like that then?
I currently do. And I do have boarding in my current facility.
I'm sorry, where is your
The professional is over on 3rd Avenue. It used to be a laundromat, I believe, the building.
Yeah.
okay.
Lumber company and that.
Training, I do grooming, and I operate lodging 7 days a week, and grooming is 4 days a week, and I train in evenings.
So like my scenario then, if there would be literally, are there houses right across the street from you there then?
Right next door. And there's a house behind, and there's the field, but right across from the field is a whole residential. So there's no buffer zone for the noise, if there was any, through that field to those houses just past it.
And in your scenario, do you actually house that many pets at one time as well? Or
I have the ability to house 34 animals in my building. My current location with the space provided, I have had 20 in the building overnight for even a long weekend, holidays being probably our biggest. And my neighbors have not complained, but I do not have open runs. I do not leave dogs left without, I have a policy with my staff, no more than 3 dogs in a play session, because I don't want anybody getting bit more than once, let alone 3 times. So my training comes from, there should be 1 person per 3 dogs, because you cannot have 1 person with 10 or more dogs and see what is happening, what can potentially happen, because dog body language, you think everybody's playing and it takes 1 and it turns into something that gets ugly fast. Barking to that extent is discouraged. Now, that's not to say that when you enter a room with 20 dogs, that the dynamic doesn't change and everybody starts barking because they know a person has entered the room. Hey, that means I'm either going to get fed or I'm going to get walked. So there is barking. But I have trained my staff and the clients that we house that even when that is happening, we can shut it down within a couple of minutes. And those that are super excited, or what could be interpreted as excited, is typically they need something. So they need food, they need to go outside right away. So those particular dogs would be addressed first, because just giving them the command and instructing them that it's not, we each turn and we're going to go through this, they need something more quickly, or they're alerting us to something. Now, as far as when we have a play session and they're barking, I don't permit excessive barking. And what I mean by excessive, if I'm throwing the ball and everybody is barking at it, that usually lasts a couple of minutes. Your own dogs will do that. Hey, give me the ball, and then you throw it, and then they're not barking. Having a dog that walks into a play session like that and is just barking and barking and barking and barking, you can have another dog that was just fine, but that barking from that one dog that is either being alpha behavior or intimidating behavior will now turn the behavior of the other dogs to where they need to feel threatened by that dog. They want to protect, or they try to alert. And unless you have the training to recognize all of the dynamics that are happening and all that body language that's happening all at once, there can be a dog fight, because one is barking, they're all loose, and it ensues something else happening. And then you're over here thinking you're playing, and then you've got a dog fight behind you that's happening. The other thing is the decibels that happen with dogs barking. You get one barking, then they get other ones barking, so they're instigating. Now they're all talking, and we could say to a new person who comes in on board, I will say, so you hear all of this barking, and well, they're having fun. They're not. One instigated, now everybody is fighting for a voice, just like a bunch of children. You have to calm them down and find out why was the one barking. Because the one that was barking because he had to go to the bathroom, or he was barking because he was now challenging another dog. So now you need to remove that dynamic so you don't have a bigger problem. But to the noise respect, to the humans, over time in my industry, if you have barking, even with grooming, you lose hearing. And we have hearing protection. I provide it for my staff, but there's no OSHA regulation. There's no regulation to any of it. So it's self-regulating. But long-term care in the pet industry has its own physical human challenges. Hearing, groomer's lung, inhaling all of this dander and fur. The other thing with the change in dynamic, you bring a dog into a new environment and it takes them a while to kind of assess everybody. Can I play with this one? Maybe they can, but they don't, because the other dog smells different or is on medication. I mean, there are so many factors. The concern, though, is the fights that can happen. When you have them and one's barking, now you get a fight happening over here. Now you have injury, and then you have a person who now has to separate that. Sticking your hands in, now you've got human injury that's happening, and it all could be minimized. And I'm not saying completely avoid it, because a dog fight can happen with quiet dogs, but it can be minimized if you don't have the barking that's happening. and you pay attention to that.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments and trying to explain the behaviors to us. I know my dogs bark when they play.
Right, when
And
they want to
that's-
play, and that's just the way it
You know,
is.
so barking is pretty common around our neighborhood because once they start, then all the other dogs do.
But see, because the other dogs are barking and they're like, well, what's going on over there? So, but if they're left alone, then that can just be, hey, look at me, come on over here, what's going on? And you end up with a bunch of people, a bunch of dogs barking in the neighborhood. And depending on your neighbor's tolerance levels is more the thing. My position is really health and wellness as a professional.
Yep.
If there's that barking, they're alerting to something. And if it's happening overnight, there is everything's inside, but having outside kennels where they are just left outside, I do believe what you're talking about, having neighbors directly across the street, which I do not have outside runs for that reason, because if a dog goes outside, sees a squirrel, sees a skunk, whatever, that they want to protect their line and defend their area. And that's an innate instinct that you cannot change.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Allison.
Give you the language because I don't like paraphrasing. So the existing language says, it shall be unlawful for any person to own, keep, or harbor any animal which disturbs the peace at any time of the day or night by howling, yelping, barking, or other noise which shall cause annoyance or disturbance to any person other than that of the owner. That's the current language. With respect to the public nuisance, it's very generic. Says it is further the purpose of this chapter, is further the purpose of this chapter to be to prohibit all unnecessary, noxious, offensive, or unhealthy smells or conditions and unsightly areas, to declare the same to be a public nuisance, and to provide penalties for the unlawful maintenance of said nuisances. So the unhealthy or offensive conditions would be the generic language that would be enforced.
But we're working on more specific language, right?
But not in this ordinance, in a public nuisance ordinance, correct?
That's what that language came from, our current public nuisance ordinance.
I'm just not real thrilled with having those exceptions because, for example, we've been sitting outside a lot more and we lived, I don't know how far from the dog park. It's over by Goodswaller Park. And now I've noticed I can really hear those dogs barking over in that dog park where, you don't notice it. Now, in the dog park, I'm imagining there's hours that people can go to the dog park. A limit at I don't know, 8 or 9 o'clock at night or something. I'm not really sure. And you have to pay, I think, to
Member.
keep your dog there. But sometimes I've talked to people that said they don't take their dog into the dog park because other dogs are in there and their dog doesn't play well with other dogs. And so they choose not to go to the dog park at that particular time until there's either one dog or no dogs or something in there. But if I was the neighbor right by that dog park, I would probably be a little upset at times because of the volume of those dogs and I'm not sure how that dog park ever got chosen for that location or what went about to get that dog park there. I'm not opposed to a dog park or that dog park. I'm just saying that if I live closer to it, I think that barking would probably upset me, especially if I just wanted to sit outside in my patio or backyard. So anyway, in relationship to this, I'm not real thrilled with the exceptions. I think all areas, no matter where you are, should comply with the rules that are set forth. Because we already took out the hours and the length of time and those type of things that were involved in the ordinance previously.
You mean in the proposed ordinance? That was never in our actual.
The proposed, yeah.
Proposed, yeah. Mhm.
To me, Allison's argument is the most compelling in that. I mean, to reading the proposed change through the lens of her argument, it's almost as if we can say, if we make this change, we're actually lowering our standard, and by lowering our standard, we run the potential risk of risking the safety of pets and therefore humans. And that's really it in a nutshell. Not thrilled with the current ordinance still.
I will say, from my perspective, I feel a lot more comfortable with new only because of knowing that the noise will be addressed. I think that's the biggest concern. As long as the nuisance policy covers that, I would be okay with it. And again, asking Allison about that, if she feels comfortable, if a well-run facility would be right across from houses in there, they should not experience any issues with it. So that was my big concern, because I just didn't feel comfortable giving a facility like this free run to make as much noise whenever they wanted to. But as long as that is being addressed, I feel a lot more comfortable.
I think that begs the question then, why change this ordinance at all?
And there's no guarantee it would be a well-run facility. You just don't know that.
But the only problem with that is we keep it, how are we going to address future locations? If new ones want to come in, and that would be going back to what I said earlier, is that if we require everyone to come in and go through and get a variance in there, at least somebody goes out and looks at it and have that knowledge of somebody going out there and knowing that it's not going to be in somebody's backyard. At least somebody checked it out, because if we don't, you basically could open up whenever you want, wherever you want, as long as you're in a commercial area. And if all these commercial areas border up against residential areas, they're going to eventually, one of them's going to open up right next door to all rural houses. And then if the folks in question there would, if the dogs would be barking, those neighbors would be very upset over that. So I'm just throwing that out just as a role of protection.
For Phil, is we have some of these that are permitted use in B3, I1, I2 for the different size kennels. We never had a size for until just this last year. Now we identify as a small, medium, and large kennel.
I don't know if the sizes will matter on there as much as, again, I think 15 dogs would drive you up the wall as much as 25 dogs, but 35 dogs would, I'm sure it's magnified to some degree, but I just feel that we need to have the ability to have somebody go out there and look at that and determine from a common sense standpoint whether this would work in that location or not.
Finishing that statement would have been looking at what you're basically asking for would be to list them all as a special exception rather than a permitted use.
Right.
And then we would
Yes, that would be the chart, yes.
each one to come through. And we discussed that back then.
And that was not, that we didn't go that avenue.
Planning side, but it's something we go back and revisit. We can go back in and revisit it, right? Or
You're right. And so that did come to the council when we went through the revision of the UDO. We made a recommendation and it came to the council and it got approved. So right now there are certain zones where kennels are a permitted use.
It's small to medium.
That they have to go in and get a permit.
No,
no, they can move in tomorrow.
Like-
If
like
your building
my-
empties out tomorrow
My
and somebody
notes, if you're
came,
ag, rural residential, R1, R2, R3, R4, you can have a small to medium kennel. Now, I don't know if that's exactly what got passed, but that's my notes.
agricultural, rural residential, was on there, was for large, was
Use matrix.
special exception. We talked about in the different densities and in our use matrix, which I had this conversation today, we'll put somebody on there as to what we were allowing them to happen. You're not going to get a big kennel or a large or a medium kennel in a residential area, but a B3, I1, I2, RR, ag, you have the potential to come in, but you have to get them as a special exception to get a large kennel. But to your fact, 15 dogs that are unruly all the time, probably just as annoying as 40 that are.
I would feel more comfortable with the special exception rule that in place, being that somebody would have to physically go out and check out. So, but just my opinion. Am I wording that right? Is that correct? Special exception.
We're asking for every animal facility to come in for a special exception rather than being a permitted use.
Well, And Allison, those that you say in your letter that are operating out of their home to do that, They probably don't even have permission to do that out of their home. I don't know. It's better than we can hear you. Yeah.
We've had a few that are came in there.
Okay.
Ran it through BZA several years.
So in that process, would you, before you grant them that exception, you go out and check it out?
Listen, I do. I don't know. I can't speak to everybody else, but I mean,
Would you feel more comfortable with that?
having the special
Yeah.
exception.
And keep in mind, it's not like we're going to have, again, we're not going to have 25, 30 of them. This may happen one more time, 2 more years, or,
20 years.
Interrupt you, Phil, on that. Maybe 15 years ago, you could have that argument. It's not, it would happen in another, you might see this industry 20 years ago was not what it is now. Animal care has grown by leaps and bounds. People are now, unlike myself, who grew up in animal care and have been doing it since I was a young child. There are more investors, people such as yourselves, looking at animal care as a great profit margin. They want to invest, build a facility. Oh, and there's no regulation. So I don't have to go to any regulating body other than deal with federal and state labor laws, or maybe a building law that as far as the zone. And that's kind of where you guys are now stepping in. Jasper's growing by leaps and bounds. And if we're going to bring in more people into more industries, along with that comes with more pets and more children. And so you can guarantee that this is going to grow. I'm speaking from living on the East Coast and the West
I've had 3
Coast.
conversations since the last meeting about care facilities, so.
we're non-dog.
Wouldn't,
But everybody has a dog except us.
And you're talking zoning, okay, B3, my building was a B3. When I came here 10 years ago and moved into Jasper and decided I'd go back into owning a facility, I walked right into this building and I said, okay, I'd like to sign the paperwork to have a business permit. Everybody looked at me like I had 10 heads. I came from states that did require not only a business license and an operating license, but I had to have it inspected by the fire department, the health department. There was more involved in what I do. So I come with that background. I opened knowing that I did not have to do all of that, which boggled my mind, but made my life easy to open it up. But I still operate as if all of those things are in place. So it can operate and it can be done, and without putting any undue stress on any neighbor. And as a professional, as I said before, we should be held to that standard, that we should be able to handle and take care of the noise levels of the animals in our facilities.
I think that's getting back to your inspections, Phil.
yeah.
Planning Commission does go out and inspect. There might not be any dogs there at the time. You're just inspecting the facility. You could have a bad operator, and then they get unruly. It sounds like she runs some pretty tough dogs. And that, being in a B3, this actually gives you more protection in case you had an unruly dog barking. Favors your business, where, you won't get in trouble. Patients. You got to identify some places. Allow these things. So there's never going to be a perfect answer.
No.
I had that conversation today too. We talked about special exception, and I happen to have a constituent that asked how often do people come in with special exceptions that you get denied. And I said, surprisingly, you come through and that you want to know percentage wise. And I said, I don't know percentage wise, but I can tell you in the last 2 months we've had 2 of them that came before us that we did not allow. One of them we offered kind of an olive branch to, and they did not take it, and or a compromise to that was not accepted, and they got denied their special exception request. The month before was the same thing. It was denied, and they came back in, changed up their motive a little bit, and now they're going to be fine.
But it wasn't an animal.
Animal, either one.
It was just a different, yeah.
Special exception in as a rule or as a general. We see them quarter of the year, 4 months or 3 months of the year.
May have been, there may be some other kind of regulation in that industry that they're looking to open. Our industry, that's where it really is falling on you. There is no regulatory. This whole COVID put a big spotlight in the industry as a whole, because of even misclassification of employees that has been brought to light. But as I said before, coming in from places where there were regulation, my questions then were, okay, where I first sought out what the noise ordinance was for animal occupying, and I sought what your building zonings were and where I would fall. And I knew immediately I fell into a B3. That was what I needed to do at that time, find a building to operate my business in. With the right research, somebody without regulation can still find what needs to so they can have a business and it can grow and it can flourish. And again, when I even moved into that building, Darla Blasey, I asked her, what do I need to do to put a fence up? It's a 100-year flood zone. She says, well, you have a neighbor. I said, I realize I have a neighbor. That's not my concern. I'm in a B3 business zone. It's a commercial property. It has a lot of green area. What kind of fence can I put up? Talk to the DNR. Okay, I've done my research. And based on what information I found there, I decided to forego, to table what my plans are as far as growing my business in that regard. But I still take dogs out and I have them out on a leash and they're in the building and they're barking and you can pull up, and occasionally, again, the dynamics change when somebody enters the room. But I've also been in places where if you have an indoor facility, you have to install noise dampeners so that if you are outside the facility, you don't hear the excessive barking. So that is another thing that I've experienced in this industry, where cities and towns have addressed, they want you there, yes, and we want to be there, but how do you make it fair to everybody involved? And sometimes a simple thing as noise dampening in buildings can help too.
It can.
Well, we've talked about this for, I think 40 minutes now. So to summarize, we have to make a decision if it's special exception, if that's what we're going to go with is a special exception, or we're going to move forward with the ordinance the way it's written, and then rely on the nuisance ordinance if we have anybody that's out of line and we address it. That's what we have to decide. So
Yeah, we either deny the change to the ordinance and stay with what we have.
Right.
You can revise or go with the revision, or pass it. Yes. Yes. If you, yes, and if you
And I will
could,
be very brief,
yeah, thank you.
not a problem. I appreciate all of your time and the efforts that have been spent on it. As far as the public nuisance ordinance, we know that you sent a letter to myself and the owners of Downtown Dog stating that the public nuisance ordinance did not cover this and they were not in violation of it. So I really would appreciate, and we would appreciate, if you would keep that in mind when you say that that's the backstop part, because it is not as it currently stands.
As it's currently written.
but she's saying it's
that's what
going to
we're
be
saying.
written to cover more specifics.
And that is why I ask you to wait on this until that is written, so that you can ensure that there is a backstop for it. I would like to know that other people will not have to go through what we have gone through, what you have gone through, because from the beginning, if this had been addressed in May of 2019, when it was first brought to the enforcement, if it had been addressed at that time as the code was written, we would not be discussing this today.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Mayor, I would like to respond to that.
Please.
From our perspective, from city staff perspective, it absolutely was addressed. We sat down with code enforcement, we sat down with police, and I know there are differing opinions, so I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just want the council to understand that it was not ignored. Based on
We sat down with the Nikons.
the information that we received, we determined that there was not an existence of an unreasonable amount of noise down there that would be considered violating the public nuisance ordinance. So we did not ignore the fact that it was ongoing. We just differed in opinion, and that's how we got to where we are, or why this has been an ongoing issue. So again, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just want you to understand that there were things going on.
I think with that all being said, that's why I have a problem with exempting those businesses from basically following the rules, or the noise part of it, I think. Anyway, so that's just the way I feel. I just don't agree with it.
Kevin's comments there, if to get this done, if we present this back at the same time we present the nuisance ordinance at the same time, that way we know we get a chance to look them over and say, okay, I'm comfortable with this ordinance here. I'm comfortable with this ordinance as it's rewritten now, as long as it covers the noise issue. And if we're comfortable with that, we'll send it through. I personally will send it through, and I'm ready to go.
I agree with that.
I don't know if we want to. We're doing one without doing the other. I think if they're both done at the same time, it would probably be better. So in other words, is it possible to have that for the next meeting then?
That's entirely up to you. Oh, no.
Not for the next
no,
one.
no. The nuisance ordinance will be definitely end of summer, if at the earliest.
Bill, because the nuisance ordinance updated or whatever has not been passed. So we really don't know how that will
These two
read.
really needs to go ahead before
Yeah.
Scenario.
I would be comfortable with that.
I would also.
Okay, we'll table this.
I'm just gonna say, it sounds to me like.
I'll make a motion to table ordinance 2020-6.
Can I do that? Yeah, I was going to say, we had Dave and John. David, John, I had a motion from Dave and a second from John. Might ask, would you rescind your motions?
Oh, resend it, I guess.
That would keep it simple.
Okay.
Then now we vote to table.
At the same time, to make sure that they both concur with one another.
And as a council, do I have a motion to table this until it is addressed with the other
Nuisance ordinance.
nuisance ordinance?
Motion.
I have a motion from Nancy, and I have a second from Phil. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's tabled. Gonna get a birthday before too long.
Yeah.
I will tell you that we will be discussing it in the PZA, both boards coming up here in the upcoming meetings. It will not be ignored. So.
Okay, the next is ordinance number 2020-14. And that is an ordinance establishing fees for the copying and facsimile machine transmission of documents. Renee, would you want to explain what that?
Absolutely. And if you're looking for it, you didn't get a copy of this in your memo on Friday.
We did.
Okay. Today.
Today.
Okay. Yeah. So we, as you know, have purchased and implemented a policy that involves body cams, which is a great thing for our police department, our citizens, and everyone involved. But what we did not have is a copy charge in our current ordinance that allows for the charge associated with when someone requests a copy of a video. A law enforcement reporting is what they're called.
Renee, would you take the mic?
The Indiana code allows for up to a $150 charge related to the downloading, saving, then downloading, and recording and providing a copy of that to someone who needs it and requests it. So this ordinance in front of you simply adds electronic information fees to the existing fee schedule. The the current fee schedule is just one section, 194.010, which speaks to copying fees and fax transmission fees. So what I did is to separate those out and put each one item in its own section so that if we need to add or change any one of those, we can do so in the future. So now
Mounts, and that's the only thing we,
there's a currently 10-cent charge for paper documents, a $1.33 charge for facsimile transmission fees. And then this electronic information fee would be $150.
And how is this given? Like, I guess electronic, but like you would email it to someone or give it to them on a,
It's saved in the cloud, but yeah, we would record it onto a disk or a flash drive. Yeah, probably a disk.
So Renee, the only new portion here is the electronic information fee.
That's correct. And we added the section called receipt of fee so that it shows where the money that is collected goes into the general fund.
Can you speak to the $1.33? It seems like an odd amount where that came from.
That's a great question. That was calculated based on the cost to provide that kind of information.
it's probably been in there for years, just like the 10 cents has been in there for years.
But frankly, I mean, I couldn't even tell you if ever that I've gotten a request for a fax of anything since I've been here. So
okay.
Maybe we're charging too much.
Or too little.
So I would go ahead and make a motion to adopt 20-14 as submitted.
I will second.
Okay, we have to go through the whole routine. Okay. So Renee was explaining what this was about, but I need a motion to consider the ordinance for one reading only.
Motion to consider by one reading only, please.
Second that.
All on a second by Chad. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Could I have a motion to have the ordinance read in full or by title only?
I'll make a motion to read ordinance 2020-14 by title only.
I will second that.
See, and Chad. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? City Attorney, please read ordinance number 2020-14 by title only.
ordinance number 2020-14, an ordinance establishing fees for copying and facsimile machine transmission of documents, repealing ordinance number 1996-61.
Could I have a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2020-14?
I'll make that motion.
Kevin,
Second.
second from Paul. Any further discussion on this? Not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can you fax that over?
33.
Okay, the next thing is resolution number 2020-8. It's a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Jasper amending the economic development for the Central Area Economic Development Area and approving the order of the Jasper Advisory Plan Commission. So with that, could I have a motion to consider resolution 2020-8 for one reading only?
Make that motion.
I have a motion from Paul.
I'll second.
I have a second from Kevin. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Could I have a motion to have the resolution read in full or by title only?
Make the motion for title only, please.
I have a motion from Paul for title only.
I'll second.
I have a second from Phil. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Could the city attorney please read resolution 2020-8 by title only?
Resolution number 2020-8, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Jasper, Indiana, amending the economic development for the economic development plan for the Central Area Economic Development Area and approving the order of the Jasper Advisory Plan Commission.
Could I have a motion to pass and adopt resolution number 2020-8?
Make the motion to adopt it.
I have a motion from Paul, second from John. Further discussion?
Could this be explained just a little bit?
And we went through the process of establishing the original central area TIF. Part of that process included developing and approving an economic development plan for that TIF area. And that plan was, I don't know, maybe 20 or 25 pages, but that included in the plan, in addition to the mission statement and much information about the development of that area, it included a list of potential projects that were anticipated. If you look at the list, there are many of them that have been already been completed, thankfully without the need for TIF money. And so we've gone through, looked at the comp plan and looked at the area and identified new projects that would either be in the area or would be serving the area. So we've added those projects to that plan list in the event that we need to use TIF dollars for those projects. We can, because they're identified specifically in the plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions around that? I think we went through the different areas last meeting just to make sure that everybody was on top of that. Is that true? We did the planning commission.
Planning commission.
Yeah, I remember going through them individually, so.
Yeah, so it will come back one more time. The process is identical to the process that we had to go through to adopt the TIF to begin with. So it starts at the redevelopment commission, goes to the planning commission where they confirm that it is consistent with our comp plan. Then it comes to this group to approve the order that came from the plan commission. Then if you approve it, it will go back to the redevelopment commission where there will be a public hearing and they will give the final confirmatory resolution.
Sounds like a plan.
The process.
Yeah, process, yeah, it is.
Okay, I have a motion from Paul and a second from John. If there's no further discussion, I'd ask for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda. Take this to Alan. You want to talk about the budget meetings?
$18th, and then the 25th is the follow-up. Basically, wanted to put it on there just so everybody has a chance. And if you have any conflicts or anything, let me know as soon as we can.
What would be the time on the 18th, Alan?
Excuse me.
Time of day?
Be 7:30 on 7:30 to 4 on the 18th, and then the 25th we'll see about. I don't know how.
The Board of Public Works meeting?
Yeah, be after that. Yeah.
30.
Yes. The,
Or really, we've gone past 4 times.
the times we have. All the department heads receiving their budget information, past history this week. They're working on their initial drafts, so we'll have meetings scheduled. I'll have meetings scheduled with them in the next several weeks. And they'll we'll come in, we'll at least have something we'll be able to present to you for review.
Do we have an idea on how much our taxes, our revenue will be down? Do we have any type of an idea?
We told them to look at 10% drop in revenue. Don't know exactly where it's going to end up at yet. I don't think there'd be more because our property tax, a big part of what we got is property taxes. I don't see them going down, and it does stay flat, but I don't see them going down very much. And then the income tax part of it, we have a fairly sizable chunk there And I think that's going to go down. The sales tax, we don't really see that much of. So that's kind of where I'm coming from right now.
Starting at 10%.
Yeah, I think across the state of Indiana, I think is looking somewhere between 10 and 15% is what the governor's been kind of going with. When I talk to other mayors, I think they're looking at about this 10% target. AIM is kind of giving us that direction as well. So we come in with a target 10% less. I think we won't know the numbers till September, probably October.
Yeah. We're meeting with our
So
budget guy in July, and he won't know the numbers then either.
And many, again, I shared this morning at the department head meeting. The mayor's listserv, the question was, what are you doing as far as wage adjustments? And it's everywhere from freezing, because of the cuts, we can't give any adjustments, to doing a cost of living adjustment, to just doing a merit and not a cost of living, but based on your performance. So, it's all over the place, and we'll have to look at where we are. Our people have done an outstanding job, I think, moving projects forward in a very tough environment. And, we've cut out all overtime, not all overtime, except for this year, for the balance of this year, we're planning to stay with it until we at least get a view as to what we're going to have.
Yeah.
I think we stick with it, and, maybe we can let it relax a little bit this fall, but at this point in time, I just don't know. Rather be a little on the cautious side.
Chad and I and Kelly gave a nice presentation. I think there's going to be a follow-up. But as a community, we're ahead of a lot of other communities in the state by what we conserve as far as, I forget which line item that was, but he had a nice bar graph on it that pointed out where some people go down to 10% of their thing, and, but we maintained always at about 50, didn't we? It was always the goal.
Our account balance,
Yeah, it's we have a conservative approach to our financials, and that's why we don't get in trouble.
Right.
And that's a good thing. I think as we go forward, we're looking at creative ways. As John's mentioned, we have a financial plan that we engage Baker Tilly with to help us look at the next 3 to 5 years and our flows and what funds will be available to us, how we might use those funds and leverage them for the projects we have on our comprehensive plan. Because we still have that Impact Jasper comprehensive plan, those priorities that are there. We just got to figure out how to fund some of those. And
I think a full report on that would be beneficial before these August hearings.
I would agree.
Well, we should have that soon. I think it's the Baker Tilly should be done in a month, by the end of.
They know our schedule. And they're going to have that information to us.
I was thinking the end of June, they were going to have
Yeah.
something sent to
June
us.
they're looking at.
When we have it, we'll make sure it gets out and we'll have that presented. Okay, anything else in the budgets? If not, moving on, we have a gas contractor's license for Randolph Guerra, who's self-employed.
So he had 94%.
We like those high percentages, don't we?
I'll make a motion to approve gas contractor's license for Randolph Guerrero.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Nancy and a second from Kevin. Any discussion on it? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And then if there's any other business to come before us,
I've got a couple things. Oh, go ahead, Renee.
I just wanted you all to get an opportunity to meet the summer legal intern. I always appreciate the funding for that. Come on up, Kyra. Kyra's doing a great job for us already, and she will be the person that helps us with that nuisance ordinance language. So, Kyra.
Fine, I'm gonna move the mask down. But hi, I'm Kyra. I'm a senior at Indiana State University. I'm hoping to go to law school. Yeah, and as she said, I'm really enjoying the internship so far. I've been doing a lot of research for the nuisance ordinance. So if you guys have any input, please let me know. I'm really hoping to do well on it. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or need anything, just let me know. I'm here to help.
What's your last name?
I'm from Ferdinand, if that helps at all.
Welcome to Jasper.
Yes, thanks.
And I've
Kevin.
got two things, Mayor. Where do we stand on putting the roots in the river that we were going to redirect?
Coming up this morning, it's planned, I think it's the August, September timeframe.
That's what, yeah.
Because it's down, the river's down. It's been down for a couple of weeks, and we pushed this off.
It's because of other priorities, and we had planned on it all along to do it in August, September, because that's normally when the river is really down.
Are we doing a lot of that work?
No, we're going to contract it out. We're actually going to take it to the Board of Public Works again and go out for a request for bid, the way I understand, in July.
Yes.
Awful long time.
It has, but you're right, Kevin. But originally that was our time frame, late in the fall, because that's when the river is at its low.
We hope.
Yeah,
We hope,
yeah.
again, yeah.
And the other question I have is, are we doing anything with the pool fences ordinance?
Yes,
Has it been enforced?
yes.
Are they putting them in?
One, two, maybe letters about in May, and everybody except for two property owners have responded and are in the process of installing fences. The two that did not respond, we just literally today sent out a follow-up letter and gave them, I think, 10 days to respond. Otherwise, they will be fined.
Okay.
There are 4 additional ones that were not identified in the first list that letters went out to yesterday, and then those are taken care of. Or as we mark those off, we will go backwards in time and start picking up the permits 1 year at a time, going backwards. Steve
does.
all the permits and go take a look and make sure that the fences are installed.
Just noticed there was a considerable time and nothing was done on some of them that had registered the complaints.
Yeah.
They hadn't done anything.
Some of them.
Many of them, well, as I said, most of them have a plan in process, but it's scheduling. Scheduling is a real problem.
At least we have someone on staff now to
Yeah,
look at
yeah.
it.
And Steve said people have been very cooperative.
Good.
One, the thing they're running up against is finding a contractor to do it. 2, contractors getting the materials in. Material shortages are still impacting everyone. So there's other scheduling issues that are out there, but the designs are there. And Steve's been given the plans and been given the timeline that the homeowner expects to get it completed. And then we are following up. As we get these completed, like she said, we are going back in time and looking at those pools that were installed previously to see if they've got.
Mhm.
So are these in-ground pools that we're talking about, or both in-ground and above ground? Or?
Right now, it's in ground.
Where focuses.
Right now, the focus is on properties for which we have a fence and pool permit that shows on the permit that a fence was supposed to have been installed.
Mine's in.
Okay.
For my information, though, if you have an above ground pool, you need a permit. Right, put it in, build it, do whatever.
Depends on
Fence though for the above.
if you have one of the, I'm not a pool owner, so one of the pool fences that goes around, yeah.
But you still have to have a permit of some sort to install it.
Anything else for the council? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Make
make-
that motion. We'll all make that
All
motion.
right, Nancy and Dave, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Meeting adjourned.